I guess we'll call a meeting to order on March 15th at 6:31 p.m. If Councilmember Davis, if you could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
Happy to do so. Please rise, place your hand over your heart and say it with me, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Crosby.
Present.
Councilmember Lau.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter.
Present.
Mayor Hepburn.
Present.
Great.
We move to announcements of upcoming and community events. Do we have anything to report, Mr. Russi, that we're
We
aware
didn't
of?
earlier. JR, do we receive anything?
No, sir.
Then I guess we move to consent calendar. And is there any, did we have anybody pull anything from the consent calendar?
Not that I am aware of, and the fact there's JR.
No request received.
Let's move ahead. Then any questions on the consent calendar? Yes, sir, Mr. Davis.
No questions. I was ready to make a motion.
Oh, please, then we'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the consent calendar as written.
Second.
Second, Councilmember Carter, thank you. All those in favor? Oh, we need a roll call, don't we?
Roll call.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Crosby.
Yes.
Councilmember Lau.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter.
Yes.
Mayor Hepburn.
Yes.
Good.
I just wanted to make a real quick comment on this, the white paper for the San Gabriel Council of Governments. The white paper was reviewed by the San Gabriel Valley Council, COGS City Manager Steering Committee, Homeless Committee, made up of elected officials and staff from 11 of our member cities and one LA supervisorial district, and ultimately approved by the San Gabriel COG Governing Board, which I'm a part of. The purpose of the white paper is to address the systematic problems with the current homelessness response system, identify comprehensive solutions, confirm our commitment to best practices and programs, and demonstrate our desire to lead the region to a more effective countywide coordinated strategy to combat homelessness. While the white paper includes a strong focus on recommendations for reform of LAHSA, it also acknowledges and discusses other challenges within the LA County homeless services system, including administration, distribution of Measure H funds. That's probably one of the most important things, is that the cities get access to Measure H funds that we were not necessarily left out of, but actually having a seat on the table. So including in administration, distribution of Measure H funds, and the implementation of other county programs. And this approach has allowed us to look more comprehensively and make broader recommendations on the county's entire homeless services system. So I really appreciate it, guys, that we went ahead and did this, because it's extremely important for us to work with the county so that we, as the other 87 cities in this beautiful San Gabriel Valley and Los Angeles County, that have some tools to be able to deal with Measure H and be able to fund our cities for the homeless issues that we have. Thank you. Appreciate it. We will move to resolution number 2114. Resolution number 2113. Mr. Russi.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll take this item. This is a follow-up to a public hearing you had about a month ago, as you'll recall, on weed abatement. And there were two properties that were not properly noticed of that. There's not a conflict.
If I can interrupt for just a moment, this really isn't 2113 because that was on the consent calendar.
I'm sorry. It's
We're now in section 6 public hearings.
we're in public hearings. You are correct, Mr. Davis. I apologize. We're number 6. We already approved all the other ones.
Revisiting a consent calendar item.
We don't need to visit.
Right. No worries. I'm sorry, Mr. Russi, go ahead.
That's okay. So at that time, it was identified that there were actually two new properties that were to be added, and they were actually connected into the Sierra River and Golf Course. They never got added to the new list. That got amended, so they never got the proper notice. So we needed to schedule a second public hearing just as it relates to those two properties. And this was the day that was identified as such. So all the others have been appropriately had their protest hearing, and we just need to do the similar action tonight for those other two properties. And as of when we came into this meeting, I didn't have any requests to speak on behalf of those two property owners declaring a protest. I don't know if Roseanne from the Ag Commission has anything to add, but that is essentially my report.
Well, the golf course was actually on the deck list for 2020. Somehow they were taken
Oh.
off this year. So this is the continuation from last year as well.
Okay.
Very good. So we have no one that wants to speak on this matter. Is that correct, Mr. Russi? Or any
I'm not
que-
aware.
So we need to open up public comment and then close it?
Yes.
Let's go ahead and open up public comment. Do we have any public comment, Mr. Russi? JR?
Mayor Hepburn.
Nothing? We'll go ahead and close public comment and go back to council. Council, do we have any questions for staff or for LA County? Mr. Crosby?
I just have a question on what was just said. I didn't understand that they were on it previously, but then were taken off last year. Does that mean the weed abatement did not happen last year?
No, they were on the list 2020. It's just during this approval process, when we sent in the deck list, they were missing from it, but we caught that right in the nick of time and we were able to add them. So
Okay.
they've been on it since 2020.
I just didn't want any of the viewers to think that they were missed a year or so before. So
No.
appreciate that. Thank you.
2020 was the first year that they were on it though.
And I have a question for Bob Chris. Bob, I don't have to abstain from this
There
area?
you go.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff or any questions for LA County weed abatement? On that, we would have a motion.
I so move to approve the second weed abatement protest hearing for the two properties left off the weed abatement list at the protest hearing held on February 16th, 2021.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lau. Roll call, Mr. Russi.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Crosby,
Yes.
Councilmember Lau,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter,
Yes.
Mayor Hepburn.
Yes.
Okay.
We move forward. We move to item 7, other matters, mid-year financial report.
Yes, that one will be handled by Mark Alvarado. I think Mark is coming on right now to give you I know we've given you some updates throughout the year, more than we've done in the past, but this is the typical time when we have our mid-year financial report where we talk about the specific changes that we need to make relative to the appropriations that we had last year, as well as identify the additional revenues. And with that, Mark will go into some of the highlights of it.
And I believe, Mr. Russi, that was a request from the council too, because of this year has been so different to maintain and keep us updated. So I really do appreciate that as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. So yes, as just mentioned, we have come to council a couple times already to give some updates based on coronavirus pandemic and everything that's been going on. So I'll touch a little bit more on that and get into some other areas of the budget that we've looked at to make some changes as we go through the rest of the current fiscal year. So starting with sales taxes, we just have alluded to, as you recall, we have come to the council twice, both times with good news to revise our numbers up. So where we left off last month in our update, we had revised our numbers up from about 3.9 million up to 4.5 million, solid $600,000 increase in our sales tax for the current year. And obviously we were very conservative going into this year, so we were definitely going in the right direction. But since we talked about a little bit over a month ago, we have gotten a little bit of interesting news. We were really excited about our internet sales growing, our tax growing. Obviously, it's growing statewide and obviously across the country. But there is a possibility of an accounting change that may take place with, I'll just call them a very, very big player in the online sales industry. And it's something where it sounds like they could possibly do it. It's just a matter of how they're going to be doing their accounting. Fortunately, they did not change anything for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year. But we were anticipating maybe they would have changed it for this last quarter of reporting, which is the 4th quarter, the Christmas quarter of activity. Those numbers were filed and there was no changes there. But there is a possibility, we are thinking that there may be a change for the next 2 quarters. The quarter that's ending, that we're in right now, and then the spring quarter. So with that being very conservative, we are going to be backing out that possibility of those numbers of that sales tax going away. So if you see in the staff report that we're making a reduction, an adjustment of $100,000. So where last month we said we were looking at 4.5 million, we're now going to revise that down to 4.4. Again, being conservative, if something changes, we can definitely come back to the council and let them know. But that's kind of where we're going to be for right now. So it still puts us at about 4.4 million. If you recall, I mentioned last time that the number we were looking at, 4.5, would have made us equal to where we were last year, which I think would be really, really good news. I think the 4.4 is still solid, but we'll continue to monitor this situation. The next area to talk about a little bit is our property tax. Strong growth in that area. When you're in a city that's well-established, built-out city, you're going to have that stability in property tax, and that's definitely what we see here in Laverne. Our collection should be a little bit under 5.3 for last year, and expecting a 3% growth. So our numbers we're looking at are about 5.4 million for property tax, our secured property tax for this year. So that's going to be about a $329,000 increase as a budget adjustment for this current year. The next area that's tied closely to our property tax is our motor vehicle in lieu fee. We budgeted a little under 3.8 million, 3,760,000 for the year. And we're looking at a little bit stronger growth in that area. So now we're going to be adjusting that up to $3.9 million, which is about $150,000 increase over what our original projection was. Now for an adjustment downward in our revenues, the ambulance transport program. This is the revenues we collect off of the paramedics doing the transport in the community. As you know, with the personnel situations in the fire department last year and the reduction and staffing vacancies, we had to shut down the service, and so we knew we were going to be impacted on the transport revenues. At the time we were doing the budget adoption, we weren't sure how long we were going to be down, and we were hoping we could get back up quickly. So we adjusted our revenues a little bit down. I think last year, 1920, we were 850, maybe 880. So we adjusted it down to 740 for the current year. Unfortunately, we didn't get the program. We got one ambulance back running toward the middle of the year, but have not had both. And so now we are looking at revenues of approximately $300,000. So that's about a $440,000 decrease from what we had hoped to get at the beginning of this budget year. In addition to that, because we were relying on a third party to do a lot of the transport service, there was an additional cost, not only a reduction in revenues, but an expenditure. And that was about $75,000 that we incurred with that ambulance transport service. So we've included that on the list of the budget adjustments, and that's been incorporated in the overall scope of the revenues and the expenditures being adjusted. Staying with the fire department, the fire assignment program, which is what I like to call them, the strike teams that go out when there's wildfires and such. We normally budget a lower amount. We get reimbursed for all of our costs. So we kind of keep those neutral. So we budgeted $250,000 on each side of revenue and the expenditure side. We've had a lot of activity. It's slowed down now, but for the first 7, 8 months of the year, there was a lot of activity, and we had a lot of strike teams going out. So we are adjusting that number both on the revenue and the expenditure side up to about $1.1 million. So we've seen a lot of activity. We're waiting for the reimbursements to start coming in, but we do definitely track that. So we'll definitely be getting all of that money back from the state. The good news of that is that there is an additional overhead fee, basically, that is paid to us for these activities. And those revenues, one for the what we call the administrative fee, and then another smaller fee that goes for what we call the rental, if we have to take any of the apparatus with them. The strike team need to take any of the trucks or anything like that, we get a reimbursement for that.
Mark, real quick, Mark, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
real quick question. Yes. What's the reimbursement time frame for the when we go out on fire calls and stuff?
You know what? Actually, it's not that bad. It's usually around 6 months or so. Sometimes it's a little bit earlier. Sometimes it's a little bit later. But if you know anything about dealing with the state, I consider anything under 12 months to be really, really good, because I've seen a lot of horror stories with that. Obviously, we want it sooner rather than later. But we probably won't get all of it by June 30th, but if we can get it in the next couple of months after the year, we can definitely, put it back into the current fiscal year. But it's not that bad. And obviously, if time starts to drag on, that's when we start hounding them to let them know that, hey, we need our reimbursement checks.
Okay, thank you. So
the revenues that we will be adjusting on the rental fee, we'll adjust that up $60,000 from 15 to 75,000, and then add $200,000 for the administrative fee revenue that will be tied to this over $1 million of activity that we will be seeing. And those monies go into a separate fund for the fire department for the replacement of vehicles and equipment. So those are some of the highlights on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, if you recall, during the budget adoption process in the spring, because of a lot of the reductions on the revenue side because of the pandemic, we did cut expenditures in departments. We held a lot of departments at their current budget. There was things they wanted to add for increased in the operation side, but we did hold a lot of stuff at bay. And the city manager did mention that hopefully if the revenues came in a little bit better during the year, we could come back to city council with some of those priorities that departments had to maybe add into the budget. So what we're looking at, doing is funding some of the departments for some of the areas where they've curtailed some of the services or stopped them. The public works area wanted to increase. We had held the vehicle and equipment maintenance charges and replacement charges. So every year we calculate how much money we need to be putting into the replacement fund to make sure we have enough money to replace all of the city's fleet. Obviously, those costs go up pretty much every year. We held those charges constant, but we're able to add back $60,000, hoping to add back $60,000 for those charges so we can keep up with the replacement cost to make sure that we've got the money when any of the vehicles or equipment come due for replacement. The streets administration wants to add $79,000 for a lot more of the consulting services that are going on regarding some of the major projects that are going on in town. On the traffic and the lighting side, we know there's additional costs with our contracts with Caltrans, and so we knew that keeping the budget status quo wasn't going to be sufficient with their cost increases. So fortunately, we can hopefully add back about $90,000 to keep up with those costs, and about $36,000 to the parks to make the parks look pretty, the grass look green and healthy. The finance department added about $23,000 for additional consulting costs that were needed for budget processes for our actuarial services, and the consulting contracts that we have with our property and sales tax consultants. In the police department, 3 items that they were looking at that they wanted to add: new cameras, some additional ammunition, and data collection software that are needed per some of the state requirements. And then on the personnel side, there was one position that was unfunded well, there were a couple positions that were unfunded at the beginning of the budget process, but one that's very critical is the assistant planner position in community development. And the staff would like to move forward with that position and get that one funded for just basically the last couple of months of the fiscal year. By the time that position is filled, it will probably be somewhere around May 1st anyway. So it's just a small amount of money to get that position in-house and get that person up to speed. And then lastly, just wanted to reiterate, we talked about this during the 2 other times we came to council regarding in conjunction with the sales tax, the Measure LV tax. We, again, being conservative along with our regular sales tax, we adjusted our revenues down to 2.7 at the beginning of the year. And now we're back up to looking at a revenue intake of $3.3 million. So that's a nice over 20% increase for the current year. And just for the clarification, again, those monies that this has been brought to council earlier, that are tied to the personnel cost increases for employee retention. And that's a little bit less than $1 million have been brought to council for those cost adjustments, which are tied to these revenues that are being brought in for the Measure LV. The one attachment that is with your staff report has a few more line items. I didn't want to go through all of them that are part of the overall adjustments that we will be making. Specifically for the general fund, you will see that the total revenues and the total revenue increases and the total appropriation increases are approximately $1.5 million. So that basically keeps the general fund status quo. But if you'll still recall that just means that we are still where we were at the budget adoption, where we were looking at the use of about $1.1 million of reserves to balance the general fund for the current fiscal year. And so we are still on track for that. So that is my summary of mid-year budget adjustments. I hope it was clear and informative, and definitely happy to answer any questions at this time.
Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Alvarado before we go to public comment? Councilmember Carter.
Yes, I wanted to know, Mark, it's nice seeing you. Thank you for coming on tonight. I wanted to ask you about our permits in planning. How has permits been over this past year? And people pulling permits for development, and has it really dropped?
You know what? I don't want to give you an answer that is
well,
wrong.
next time you give the report, how about you look at it then?
Okay.
I don't want to throw something on you.
I know there is definitely a little bit of a lag.
I would think so.
And it's a little bit under, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the activity is lower. But I can definitely get that to you ASAP.
Okay, the next time we do our reporting.
Eric is coming on. He may have an answer for us. Eric.
There he is.
Mr. Shear.
Oh, can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Muted.
You're muted.
Or something.
No, he's not muted, but
Yeah, sometimes laptops don't pick it up for some reason.
No.
Privacy settings.
What I can do if
coming over to help you.
well, I think he's at home is the problem.
I don't know how to sign, so I'm sorry. I haven't learned that yet, but I think I should.
What we can do, since he's having difficulty getting his microphone on, and yeah, we can't read lips. I think what we need to do is we'll get back to council with some numbers. I can let you know, and Eric, if you can nod, we haven't had any major projects, so that drives a significant part of what our building permit revenue usually is. We have had some of the smaller individual residential projects that have occurred, but where we see a large amount of that money is when we have some of the larger projects. That certainly has slowed down in comparison to prior years. Is that pretty accurate, Eric? So what's that? A little bit.
You know, we could use a Sharpie and a piece of paper, you know, and just turn it around.
But we will get some numbers to council easy enough tomorrow so you can have those.
Yeah, even the permits pulled for homeowners doing projects, those kind, just all the permits for planning, if we could.
That one has been up in comparison to historical. That one has been higher. So we can get you with those numbers.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Any other questions before I go to public comment? Let's go ahead. Is JR, anybody, well, let's close, we'll go to public comment right now. Eric or JR, do we have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, we have received no request for this item.
We'll go ahead and close public comment, come back to council. Council, we have any questions for Mr. Alvarado?
I do, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Just a question on Mr. Alvarado. You kind of explained how internet sales tax is going down a little bit, maybe next year. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Okay, so basically what's happening is Amazon is looking at redoing how they are reporting. So it has nothing to do with the economy, with people not buying stuff or anything like that. It's basically they are just looking at changing their reporting, and it sounds like they possibly can, which is going to change point of sale. So that's where the focus is right now. We're not sure how that's going to wind up.
And would that only affect their products, or would that affect all internet sales then?
We are not sure. I actually asked that specific question to our consultants because we do get their revenue in two buckets. One of it is the items that are sold from Amazon, and then the other bucket is the revenue, the sales tax that we get from other third-party companies that are using their platform to it. So we are getting it in two different buckets, but they're not sure if it's going to affect both or just one of them.
And
Councilmember Lau.
Do you know what the time frame looks like, or do we know what the potential impacts are, or is it too soon to speculate? Like, do we need more detail to know what the potential decline will be?
Well, we're not sure if it's going to be both of them, if it's going to be one. There was the possibility that they were going to change the reporting for this quarter that just finished, but they didn't. So the timing could be that it could take effect for the current quarter going forward. It could maybe they're waiting and they're doing something with the legal department, or something's going back and forth where maybe they're going to try to get it going for the fourth quarter, maybe the start of the next fiscal year. But I will tell you that the adjustment that we just made right now, about $104,000, I believe we put in the report, is basically half of what we're getting. So if we want to extrapolate and say if the worst scenario happens, then that's about $200,000.
But Mark, I mean, point of sale for Amazon is not going to be Washington State. I mean, it's got to be, if I order something,
They're looking at making their distribution centers the points of sale so that it goes to
Oh,
the agency where the distribution centers are. That's really the crux of the difference.
Yeah.
They're still going to get, you're still going to collect sales tax. It's just, it's not going to be directed through the state. It's going to go and be assigned to whatever community those distribution centers are.
Has the distribution sites.
And this is not a Laverne thing. This is everywhere thing.
Right. Oh, right.
So
Right.
I,
Absolutely.
you know, the big Ontarios are would be making a lot more than the little.
Well, yeah, I can see some big lawsuits coming down the pike on that.
Well, here you go. You have other distribution facilities also that, even though this is a different type of distribution, but you have car manufacturing, things like that. You have manufacturers. It's like, where do you stop?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a brick and mortar where, people are accessing the store and interacting, that sounds like I say, a good lawsuit.
Well, I mean,
It's actually, it's called fuzzy math. And seriously, it's actually called fuzzy mathematics and trying to pinpoint locations of transactions based on something that happens with clicks on a computer. So, and I appreciate the fact, Mark, that you guys are withholding 104,000, which is about half of what we think might be the hit, but it may not because they need to implement it. They've got to figure out how to pinpoint and understand which clicks are Ontario at the time that they're doing it, because they don't know. As anybody who receives a package can sometimes see, oh, this came all the way from New York. So if that's really New York, they've got to figure then out which distribution center, if any, do they want to determine that comes from, or do they just want to consider it a California sale, which is what they're doing right now. And then they're saying, all right, here's California sales. We'll distribute it by county. Then you guys in the county figure out what each take is on that. And that's how they're doing it now. And they want to be more specific. Why? Because distribution centers want a little bit more money.
So I don't want to get too deep tonight, and I know you don't either. But when I buy something from Amazon, it immediately adds the 10.25% tax with Measure LV and the whole Laverne zip code.
Right.
And if we're going to reallocate that into San Bernardino County where the tax rates are different, I don't see how that's going to work.
Well, they'll have to change how much you get taxed. If they tax us for Laverne,
but the only way they're knowing when I'm clicking is my zip code.
I understand that they're gonna. That's why I'm calling this fuzzy math. It's not.
I'm gonna say that this is very fuzzy for all of us. So we'll have to. This is one of those conversations that I think Mr. Kress is correct, and I think Mr. Davis is correct that this might be a situation for some attorneys to look at seriously if they start doing this, because this is going to affect a lot of communities.
So,
right. It happens in the world of energy all the time. So I get it. It's not an easy thing to settle either, which leaves it ripe for what Mr. Kress is saying. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
So Mark, has there been any rumblings from any cities or communities that are anticipating an impact? I mean, because I can't imagine that, we're the only ones that are thinking about how is this going to affect our bottom line. I'm sure there are communities that are thinking about that. Is there any rumblings that you've heard out there?
I haven't heard any from the finance side. Bob, you may have heard when talking to the different city managers.
No, but typically what happens is they usually wait until something takes effect, and then they go back and ask for a review by the Franchise Tax Board or whatever the name of the new agency is to revisit whether this was appropriately applied. But to anticipate what it's going to be, they want to wait until it actually does occur. So I would expect that would be next year once they put in whatever has occurred. We've only received this information through our sales tax consultant who says, hey, this is what's being pursued. So we are anticipating that your number could be lower as a result. And so we've taken this conservative approach rather than giving you much grander projections than what might occur. So we could come back with good news, but at this point we're going to pull back a little bit on those projections.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if there are not plaintiff law firms and whatnot already this is on their list and they're anticipating who they're going to go recruit as their,
Those that specialize in it, we've been engaged, as you know, in one class action
Mhm.
lawsuit regarding recapturing of revenues, and this could be an
Right.
opportunity for that similar firm to take this on as well. We'll just have to wait.
Yep.
Well, any other questions for Mr. Alvarado? Just a couple quick comments. This just shows the delicate nature of how money can escape out of your general fund from other areas. So we have to be diligent and be cautious. And I really do appreciate our conservative approach to everything we do to make sure that the tip of the scales goes in our favor. But still, we're not out of the woods. This is still a rough environment. It's changing every day. A lot of cities are in much worse shape than we are. Actually, we're in fairly decent shape considering what we've gone through. So, but I do appreciate that. I did have a real quick question. This is kind of going back to our audit demands. It's the portfolio holdings and pooled investments. Mark, a lot of these investments are coming due in 2021. Are we looking at some other pool of investments with, I don't know, rates are so low right now. I mean, I'm sure that you guys are looking at that as far as
we have an investment policy, and as we had previously met with the finance subcommittee, some of those yields on the longer term, we try to stagger them, but the yields that are out there on those 3 to 5 year just aren't attractive at this point. Yes, we do need to start investing, but I think when we looked at it last, I'm trying to remember when exactly it was, just those 3 to 5 year windows, it just wasn't favorable to be putting anything away. So we're hoping that the market improves where we can start to reinvest. But at this point, no. We will come back to the finance subcommittee to look at our
recommendations.
with our investment the investment plan that we have already laid out to try and start putting some of those assets back into generating interest for us.
Yeah, because in 2021, we have about 10 investment pools that are up and due. So,
okay. And we had several this year, but as we were looking at what to reinvest in, there just wasn't anything that was much better than at this point, which had much better liquidity.
Not when interest rates are so low right now. It's just amazing. Yeah. Do we need to make a motion to approve this, Mr. Kress?
Yes.
I would like a motion. Any other questions or concerns? Mr. Alvarado, thank you very much. May I have a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve the budget amendments detailed in the included budget amendment listing to adjust the revenues and expenditure appropriations for the fiscal year 2021 budget.
And I will second that.
Councilmember Carter seconds. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Davis.
With a great deal of appreciation to the entire finance division, I vote yes.
Councilmember Crosby.
Yes.
Councilmember Lau.
Aye.
Councilmember Carter.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Carter. Mayor Hepburn.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Apologies.
Very good. Now we move to public comments and communications. Do we have public comments?
We do. And actually, before we do, I know there was an ask earlier.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah, I had mentioned it before we started the meeting regarding just putting out there that, with the change that came into effect today with LA County moving into the red tier, there are some significant changes, some changes as it relates to businesses. And so it was asked that, I kind of run through some of those. On the restaurant front, indoor dining will be allowed for 25% of what the restaurant's current capacity is, with one household sitting at a table at a time. Schools may reopen fully if they so desire based on meeting the county protocols. Movie theaters, and we haven't heard what this means for Edwards or if they're going to reopen, but they can open to indoor operations of 25%, which, as we know, based on their seating would be limited, but still they could allow that to occur. And then gyms are allowed for indoor operations of 10% capacity. And then that would still require that people be masked at all times while they're doing that. There was museum and gyms and aquariums, but those are zoos, and those don't affect us, so I won't go into that. In addition, youth sports has been expanded. They are allowing a lot more youth sports to actually practice in a traditional sense as well as have games. Masking is required at all times during the practices. We have shared all that information with our youth sports and some of our other users so that they are aware if they want to start ensuring that they're going to satisfy the protocols to be able to start getting some more activities for our kids. Also connected to that, on the other side, we received a notice today, and unfortunately, as it relates to waste management, there are a couple of what we'll call rollover routes, and that is just simply the results of some staffing challenges that they're having connected to COVID, as far as not necessarily drivers that are symptomatic, but drivers that they're challenged in getting enough back whenever they have one or two. They just have such a limited staff. And the two areas that are being affected strictly by recycling that may not be fully picked up today, so leave your cans out till tomorrow, are basically Emerald and Wheeler from Baseline up to about Sierra Laverne generally. And then there's the route that is Arrow on the north side, west of B to the city limits, and then Pudding Stone Village, so that condo complex down there. They may have gotten to some of the route, but they certainly didn't get to all the routes, all the households in those general areas. So those are some of the goods and bads as it relates to COVID. So thank you.
Quick question. You mentioned Edwards. Has any communication been had with Edwards as far as if and when?
We have not, since today was the first day that the restrictions came up, but we do plan to reach out to them. One, as it relates to some of the landscaping, but also what is their intent to hopefully do some amount of reopening. So once I get some amount of information back, I'll certainly share it with council.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for the update. That's a lot of good news. So
thank you.
But here's a good thing. So, okay, public comments and oral communications. JR, do we have some comments tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one that we've received so far. I have Robert Russell on the line.
And JR, before you do, you can take Mark off unless he wants to stick around.
Night, Mr. Alvarado.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council.
Good evening, Mr. Russell.
While I'm a former Laverne resident, most of my immediate family still lives in the community. I've also served with the Laverne Fire Department for over 25 years. I stand before you today to express my concerns about the fire department's current state and the challenge that we face in providing service to our community's residents and visitors. While I could look back and rehash the issues that have led us to this point, we must all look forward to providing the service that the residents of this community, such as my family who live here, deserve. The fire protection challenges and risk profile to this community are no different than any other in metropolitan Los Angeles. Call volume has increased from 1,500 calls per year in 1995 to over 3,600 calls per year now. Response times for both fire and EMS calls averaged 8 minutes in 2019. Organizations such as the National Institute for Science and Technology, Underwriters Laboratories, OSHA, and the
Did anyone else lose them?
Yes.
We all did.
is 9 firefighters on duty. We are the only department in the metro LA area that does not meet the standard for an effective fire force.
Hold on, Robert.
Sure.
Mr. Russell, we kind of lost about,
We
I don't
lost
know.
you at OSHA.
Yeah, OSHA.
Okay.
If you could start
All
over,
right.
if you don't
So
mind.
can you hear me a little better now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. I'm going to back up here a little bit. So the National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710 states that the total effective response for single-family residence is 17 firefighters, and that for an apartment, the force is 27 firefighters. We currently have 9 firefighters on duty a day. We are the only department in the LA metro area that does not meet this standard for an effective fire force. The OSHA required 2 in, 2 out standard is also challenging due to the limited number of on-duty responders. The city's fire services report clearly stated that to meet 1710, the department would require a total of 18 new positions at an additional cost of $4.2 million per year. Considering this cost, we must impartially review all options to fund, staff, and equip this department to meet the challenges that we face today. I strongly urge you and the community to view the August 25th, 2020 study session presentation on the city's fire services report. This report highlights the challenges the department continues to face in providing service to the community. One of the key findings of this report is the difficulty in ensuring an effective response is provided on all potentially high-risk, low-frequency incidents such as structure fires. The service delivery challenges identified in this report should be acknowledged before formulating an opinion on how best to provide service to the community. As a community, we must objectively evaluate the department's operations, identify benchmarks for performance, and determine realistic levels of service. These efforts will help us make an informed decision about providing fire and EMS service to the community. Lastly, I would like to ask that you continue to acknowledge and support the dedicated firefighters who continue to provide service to this community each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. JR?
No other requests have come through, sir.
We'll give it a couple seconds. Nothing else, JR?
No, sir.
We'll go ahead and close public comments. We move to council comments and conference meeting reports. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Councilman
Mine's real short. I just want to tell Bob Russi, our city manager, thank you for that wonderful report. Hearing all the changes that are going to take place, I am thrilled. And I want to thank the residents for being so supportive, even though nobody really wanted to move forward. As long as we did, people were supportive of that. We have to wear a mask. We have to understand the closure of restaurants, stores, whatever it took. And I want to thank everyone for that, for being part of it. And now that we are slowly opening, we still need to be smart. Wear the mask, everyone, please. Wear the mask so we don't have to close down. To me, the biggest loss was our poor students that didn't get to go to school for a whole year. It really impacted those kids. I am thrilled they get to play sports, but more importantly, that we get to slowly open up the schools. So let's be smart. If your child's sick, don't send them to school. Be thinking of all the other students and the teachers. And I thank Bonita Unified for being so involved on this daily, keeping us informed. And I'm looking forward to a slow opening of everything. But the only other thing I wanted to say was Gold Line. I had one meeting this week, or two meetings this past week with Gold Line, and they have changed the time frame for when they expect the completion. It was going to be a year earlier than what was anticipated. And so at this point now, it isn't going to be a full year because of COVID. With just looking at the whole schedule, it'll be 3 months earlier than what they anticipate. So 2025 to Pomona. And they will not open any portion of it until it's through to Pomona. But I wanted to keep you informed on that.
Thank you, Councilor Carter. Councilmember Davis.
Sure, thank you. I join Councilmember Carter on her comments on COVID. Additionally, I'd say if you intend to, please get vaccinated as soon as you can. I'm excited that vaccines should open up for most, if not all adults. I think it's May 1st. And so I don't have to wait as long as I thought I would. But let's keep our practices as close to they currently are, even though there's more opportunities to engage. We're seeing in Italy that the infection rate has just jumped dramatically, and so it's a good thing that we've vaccinated over 30 million adults completely, and over 100 million adults have been at least had a one shot, and we're currently exceeding 2 million vaccinations per day. So those are all good things happening. I want Laverne to keep strong and keep up the good work that we've been modeling for ourselves and others. I was fortunate enough to sit in on a LA City selection committee on behalf of our mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for that opportunity. It was an entertaining and enlightening event. The slate got completely filled with elected members, so that was a good thing. Basically, the engagement in our democratic process is an important engagement, and elections aren't the only things to participate in. So things like committee members and things like that are important. And I think the conversation that Mr. Russell brought up in public comment can be generalized. And I don't think we need to contain it simply in city council meetings. I'm hoping that people are studying the information that's out there. I hope as I've been able to participate in conversations with residents, I'm hoping everybody is taking the effort to engage in our governmental process and understand this decision as completely as they can, and not just limit it to this audience and this venue for that conversation to happen. So please get out there and take advantage of all this and show folks that the residents in Laverne are actively engaged and want to be a part of the solution. Finally, the Cultural Awareness and Social Inclusion Committee is actively trying to engage residents in several different activities. So I'll steal Wendy's thunder a little bit, and that is that Wendy and I are hosting a Join Us for Dinner event on April 11th at 5 p.m. Please go to what is it, lavernediverse.org. I can never remember the website, and check it out and join us for dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Crosby.
Yeah, with all the news about going into the red tier, and because we moved over 2 million vaccinations in California here, it's been a really good couple weeks for me, because I was helped running vaccination events for educators. Over 3,400 educators in the last 3 weeks got vaccinated through my work and City of Hope. So it's really good to see, and people come through. It's really inspiring and excited so that we can get those classrooms back open and get our kids back in school. I'm also excited for our restaurants. Only a year ago, St. Patrick's Day, we were closed for St. Patrick's Day, and that was a big issue happening. And now we are opening up for St. Patrick's Day. Hopefully we don't become super spreader events. Make sure that we have fun and responsible time during this St. Patrick's Day this week. And just I'm glad youth sports can come back, and that we can get people being outside. Outside's one of the safest places to be, and making sure that's a good place for our kids to be running around and playing in and doing activities, and making sure that they're getting that energy out. So thank you for everybody, what they're doing, and keep working at it. It is not over. We just need to make sure that we are being responsible. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Crosby. Councilmember Lau.
Thank you. Mira did steal a little bit of my thunder, but it's totally fine. But just to elaborate a little bit more on what the dinner events are, Cassie, the different committee members are hosting dinners throughout, the next coming weeks. And this is just a way for us to get to know our neighbors, because I always liken this to anyone's a George Carlin fan, he did a little skit or a little bit where he talked about, if you had to shake hands and meet everybody in the world, it would make fighting with them or, bombing them much less likely, because you'd say, not him, I know him, so you'll have to look up the clip. He's much funnier. His delivery is much better than mine, but I definitely think this dinner idea is an awesome way, especially as we are still trying to be safe due to COVID, for you to meet some folks that you might not meet otherwise, that you could really build your connections. And so definitely take a look, check us out, come to dinner. Maybe you might be interested in hosting a dinner. So definitely take a look. We'd love to see you. And I would just echo some of the other comments that council members made with respect to COVID. You know, it is crazy to think that it's been a year. It's really nuts. I remember when the first, stay-at-home order came through, everybody was like, well, give it a couple of weeks, man, it's a bummer, but we'll be back, in 3 weeks or so, right? And then 3 weeks became 2 months, then it became 5 months, and then all of a sudden here we are at the year mark. And so, there's a lot to take away from this past year. I know everybody's had struggles and challenges, and I just really urge everybody, let's not get too complacent. There are variants of this horrible virus out there, so be safe and be careful. And on a personal note that I was sharing with the council members, before we started in on our council meeting, I'm still dealing with my dad being in a convalescent center, and it's becoming even more clear for those of you who are probably in my age range who are now starting to have to look after their parents, how important it is just to have your paperwork in order and to have your directives in order. What do you want to have happen to you? Should you become sick or incapacitated? Do you have a will? Do you have, your property in line so that, your family doesn't have to stress out too much about it, but more so just to, again, protect yourself and make sure that your wishes are looked after. So I know it's not anything fun that anyone likes to talk about. Nobody likes to believe that they're going to become sick or old or ill, right? You kind of think that you're going to keep on ticking just the way you are today, right up till the day you go. But that's not always the case. So definitely take care of each other, be safe, be kind, and, get your stuff in order. Get that attorney, get that, financial advisor, get that stuff in order, because it is really daunting.
Thank you, Councilmember Lau. I'm just going to reiterate what everybody else said. I'm excited for the red tier. I'm excited for our businesses to start opening. I know some won't because 25% is not quite enough for them to stop the takeout, but it's at least a light at the end of the tunnel for everyone. And the schools starting back up, even at a reduced rate. Also, just the youth sports is so exciting for me because I see them out playing now, and it's like, okay, we're getting back to somewhere where it used to be. I mean, I think it was April 6th, 2020, where we took over office with no one in a council chamber. And that was it. I mean, that was it for, it's been over a year. So everybody's endured. It's not been easy for a lot of people. This has been tough for all of us. We've lost loved ones. We've, with school and kids not being able to graduate and colleges shut down and, but we're a pretty tough crowd. I think we'll get through this. I think that moving forward is, as long as we stay safe, that's what's so important. As you've all said, please wear your masks out. Even if you're vaccinated, you have your vaccination pods, man. Keep with your friends and your people and push those people that they're, let's get the vaccinations. If you choose to get one, please go out and get them. They will be more readily available. So it's looking better. Thank goodness, it's just looking better. But I do one big thing that we're going to have a big vacuum in the city when Dan Kesey leaves us at the end of the week. And I just want to personally thank Dan for everything he's always done for us. Always available, always a wealth of knowledge, any situation or anything on an audit in demand, anything to do with paving, public works, water, electricity, utilities, you name it. Just an unbelievable wealth of knowledge. And he will be sorely missed. I know that we have we're looking at another individual right now, apparently, but these are going to be some very, very big shoes to fill. And he will be sorely missed. He has been such an asset to the city and to all the residents with his wealth of knowledge and also the people that he's worked with. So Dan Kesey, thank you very much and enjoy your retirement. Anyway, I think that's it. Do we have anything other business, Mr. Russi? Then I think it's time to adjourn, don't you, people? It's 7:30 p.m. Our next regular scheduled meeting will be April 5th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Everybody have a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Go out.